This is my review of Alex Hormozi and the 4 businesses he built from nothing.
I started 4 businesses that cracked 10 million in a row. I want to share the frameworks and lessons I learned from the many mistakes that led to those 4 in a row, so that hopefully the next business you have or the current business you're on can achieve that level and beyond. So the first big company I built was called Gym Launch. It was a licensing business for gym owners, as in I had a model and I would license that model to them. They would use those things, they'd make more money. The average gym would make an extra $100,000 a year in profit. Business at its peak was worth about $150 million. And then COVID hurt that business, and I ended up selling it for $46.2 million to American Pacific Group, which is a private equity firm out of San Francisco. The first 10 customers I got from Gym Launch, I got somebody to pay a VA in the Philippines to scrape CrossFit's database and then send me the list of emails. I then uploaded them to Facebook, made a lookalike audience off of those, marketed to get a webinar, which no one watched, and then I had 80 leads from people who had opted in, and none of them bought or scheduled a call. And so I looked up every one of the emails manually, and I friended them on Facebook, I messaged them, and then I got a few of them on the phone to pay me $500 to go out to fly to their gym and actually do the turnaround.
That is a great example, and where most people would have stopped at so many of those steps. So let's go back and talk about how he had an idea and he's going to go ahead and outsource someone to scrape data. So he got his list and he did his webinar. I don't know how many you see these days, and I've done them too. I totally get it. It's a reasonable sales tactic to do the webinar and get the leads and have them funnel in and all this stuff. So they sign up for the webinar. He gets, who knows how much money he spent on that initial ad, to, let's say it's a few $100 to get his 80 potential customers. And he goes through the process of, no one shows up for the webinar, and most people would say, this is a failure, I'm going to move on to the next thing. But instead he says, well, I still have my list. He's had a huge list from the Philippines. He refined it down to 80 people, and now he's going to friend them on Facebook and try to get them on the phone just to convince them to then fly out and do the work. And that kind of hustle is something that is, it's foreign to most people. And I'm over here and on my insurance business, making those calls every single day and putting in those reps, because that's going to be the volume there is going to be what really makes the difference in the long run.
I started the licensing version of the model, which is the one that really gave me the scale. I was able to sell something that had virtually 100% margins. The first month, I think I did 120,000 in sales. And the next month I did 300-ish, and then high 4s, and then 780. And all I was doing was just selling more units. And then we hit $1 million the next month. We would look at whatever problems the gym owners that we were with were currently suffering from. So it could be they're suffering from churn, or they could be suffering from margin issues, or they could be suffering from they're not getting enough leads. Close rates aren't as high as we want them to be. We would then create a hypothesis around what we thought might work. We would survey the community and say who has the best conversion rates, if that's what we wanted to fix. And then we'd invite 20 of them onto a call. We would take all the notes to figure out what things they were all doing. And here's the important point. We didn't say, great, we're gonna do all these things. We tried to see the few things that they were all doing. Then we'd say, hey guys, this is a big deal. This is worth the cost of change. You're gonna have a demonstrated long-term benefit to the business. For context, my best gym did about $600,000 a year. Our average gym, who's a gym lord, made $600,000 a year. Big picture is that the product has to be exceptional.
This is a great breakdown of classic sales. And so this is a skill that I think everyone should learn, and especially if you're going to want to really level up your income game and make more money. It doesn't matter if you're in the service industry or if you're trying to sell a product or whatever you're doing, or whatever role you have in a company. Sales is just an innate skill that has been ingrained in humanity over a millennia. And so the way that he breaks down finding the pain point and then doing the research and addressing it with a concrete solution, think of your sales journey with whatever it is that you're doing for work and income as something that you're on your own hero's arc towards the next destination of whatever it may be.
If your customers are in love with your product, which takes more time, because people are like, oh, you threw this thing together. It's it took 6 years for me to put all those pieces together and then finally be able to monetize that deliverable. And that little inch between good and great is years. But the return you get on it from the word of mouth that compounds is hard to fathom. One of the other big secrets of Gym Launch was that we had a very different approach to acquiring customers. The traditional model of most businesses in general is loss leader, you get someone in for some sort of free thing, you lose money on the acquisition, you make it up in LTV. I came with a different model, and I've since done that in every single business I have. So this is one of the important frameworks that I want to pass to you, and it's something called client financed acquisition. So client financed acquisition basically means you get the customers to finance the acquisition of the next customer. So all you have to do is have enough money to get the first sale. And if you make more in the first sale than the cost to acquire that customer and the cost to fulfill that customer, plus the cost to fulfill the next customer and the cost to acquire the next customer, you eliminate capital as a constraint in the business. If you can put $1 in and get 2 customers back, then that next customer buys you 2 more and 2 more and 2 more. All my gyms were able to just crush everyone else because we could outspend them. I've taken that aggressive acquisition perspective to every one of the businesses that I've had.
To apply this to your business, the key ingredient is going to be your margin. And when I say margin, I mean, let's say that you're selling a hat. This is my 2-year-old son's little Alaskan bear hat, and it's precious. Okay, so let's say you sell this for $5, but it costs you $2.50 to make it. So your margin to work with is 50% of the sale value of it. But in order to really be able to do what he's talking about, to make and to sell the next thing, the next hat, this hat is going to have to be sold for much, much more. And that's where you see a lot of the success of these luxury goods. And these examples from people, it takes them a few $100s to make a bag. They sell it for tens of thousands of dollars. They don't have to sell as many. If you go through some of his other videos, you can see just how much he focuses on selling premium good or service to whoever his customer is.
Many terrible things that happened during Gym Launch. I mean, one, we had COVID, which was tough, for gym owners in general. 1/3 of all of our clients went out of business. Another thing that we did that was really bad was we overhired for our support. I had hired an inexperienced director of customer service. She was a frontline rep that we just promoted all the way through. High work ethic, but no experience. And so she hired 35 reps, and we only needed 5. So we had to lay off 30 people. And then that became a thorn in our side for the next 2-3 years because our glass door got smashed.
I don't want to overstate the value of the public perception of your brand. And if you're a growing business, or let's say what's more typical for my viewers is you're a family and you've got a product that you're selling, let's say like online on Etsy, and you need to be able to sell more and more. Those reviews online, the reviews in the comment section of whatever your product is, are so key because it's not just a referral. It's something that is going to be like a testimonial that sits on your product page or on your brand potentially forever. And so making sure that your customers are happy, and not just that, but your employees are really well taken care of. Those are the most important people to your business because they make up your business. It's make or break how their perception is of their experience working with you.
I had arbitrage on Facebook ads before anyone else did, and we created a turnkey system around how to monetize it. I was running ads on Facebook in 2013. You could put a girl with a bikini and say, click here now. Like, it was the Wild West. The second thing, because of that arbitrage, the average gym was taking home an additional $30,000 in cash in their first 30 days. That was the average. If you take a business where the average business owner is making $36,000 a year in profit, and then you add $30,000 in the first month of working with them, you don't need to worry about marketing. Technically, my return on marketing was 100 to 1 for the first 18 months of the business. But it's because I probably could have just not marketed at all, and I would have had the amount of people that came in. So like, who knows if the ads were doing anything? But everybody from the outside was like, this guy's ads are everywhere. Like, he's killing it. So many people who are copycats, Mickey Mouse, gimmick, bullshit. People who just used old versions of our stuff to try and sell at like all the stuff you would imagine. All those guys went out of business because they didn't have the depth.
That's so key, where you see so many copycats out there, and it's a good example of how you can't just take someone's success and immediately try to replicate it piece for piece without really understanding and putting the sweat equity. Remember at the very beginning how he was making the calls, flying out, meeting the people, really doing the research on what made the other people in their market successful. All that work is what culminated into a foundation that he was then able to run ads and sell off of. For example, when it comes to financial coaching and the education that I'm providing here for free, this all culminates from conversations I have with real people sitting down at the kitchen table, looking over their budget and talking about their family finances and their long-term goals, helping really chart a path to help them succeed.
This was my second big company, which actually is really a sister company to Gym Launch. We built the whole thing of an affiliate base that we acquired through Gym Launch. And so like the first month of being fully operational did 1.7 million. I didn't want to sell supplements for a very long time because I was like, supplements, you just need to eat right and work out. This woman wouldn't leave my office. She's like, my friend says I need supplements. Like, fine. So I wrote her a list. I was like, go get this stuff, go away. She came back the next day with the things and she was like, I just want to make sure I got the right stuff. And I saw the receipt and it had $700 on the receipt. And the thing that I had sold her was $400. And I was like, fuck that. I'm gonna sell supplements. So I would recruit a gym owner and I would say, hey, we're teaching you all this marketing and sales stuff over here. If you just sell every person supplements, it will cover the cost to acquire a customer just from the physical products. And the beautiful thing with selling physical products is that there's no added fulfillment. One of the problems is the more you sell, the more you have to deliver, right? And so it's kind of this double-edged sword where the moment you swipe the credit card, you're like, deliver on this, right? They didn't have to do anything. They literally just swiped the credit card and then we managed centrally, we would ship it direct to the consumer. I wanted to create a brand only gym owners sold. No one else could sell it. We priced it on our home site higher. We priced it 30% higher on the main site. So there was significant savings. On top of that, we gave them a very good selling system because I had learned a lot about selling supplements. I made it a recurring subscription. So now they got to have 2 recurring subscriptions per customer. I picked the first 10 customers from our distribution base already. So I rolled out 10 locations.
That's amazing, really, how he took a recurring subscription model where they didn't have as much fulfillment when it comes to just having a gym membership, and then they stacked it with a second recurring subscription model. And it's really a wake-up call, because if you've got customers in your small business and you're not considering what else they could be buying, if you've got a captive audience, then it's key to do something that is relevant and that provides value. So often you see people trying to hawk their goods, and maybe it's something like a local grocery store, but then they're going to sell dirt bikes, and it's like, this doesn't really make sense. This is outside of your brand. But if it's a local grocery store and they can have their own private label of things, or they can have fancy, unique luxury goods that they can bring in and make it a special event. Now that's something that they can have high margins, high return on investment for the people that are already coming in just to buy a loaf of bread.
I rolled out 20 or 30. Next month I rolled out another 20 or 30. And then we did the big launch to everyone. There's lots of little things that we did that were gym specific that no other supplement company could do, which has given us a nice moat in that space. It cost me $4 million to start Prestige Labs. About $1 million of that went to the tech. So we created an entire point of sale for supplements that was specifically made for gyms. So every gym would get a retail kit, so they'd have a full wall of products. They would have a kiosk, which is a stand with an iPad type thing on it. Shopify didn't really exist then. We had to build this whole thing. And then the other $3-ish million went into just product. The biggest difficulties with it is supply chain. So like if you run out of one ingredient on one product, like you can't sell the product. There are also legal firms that will buy all your products and try and test to find something that's off or underrepresented or whatever. There's predatory law firms that as soon as you have a patent, they'll just try and find people to sue, and they'll just like basically rev share on the amount of money they can get. The end consumer is just not sticky. And that's just because people don't stick with fitness stuff in general for a long time.
That's interesting how he essentially in reverse unpacked all the things you could be considering. If you want to create a side hustle and you want to develop a group of customers, then you want to benefit from something that is low risk. And so if there's like legal implications, health implications, I mean, food is just tough in and of itself. But if you want to create a small business that has that aspect to it, you need to consider those elements. And then the recurring customer model. I see so many times that people, they say, I'm going to make these healthy granola bars that everyone seems to love. And so they're creating the granola bars in the garage and they're packaging it. And maybe they even have every box checked, but is your product really going to be able to compete with something that's off the shelf at Publix or Costco? How convenient is it? How accessible is it? How quickly is it going to integrate into the lifestyle and habits of your consumer? The housekeepers that we have, their value is immeasurable, and every other week they come in our house, they clean everything, and all of a sudden, after the very first time, we couldn't imagine our life without it. And that recurring model of revenue and the lifetime value of our relationship with our housekeepers is going to be much higher than just a one-off cleaning service.
For you guys, Mosey Nation, around Prestige Labs, is that I probably shouldn't have done it. That's the real. It is a good business, but I think that if I had allocated more time to just making Gym Launch better, Gym Launch would have been bigger. And because Gym Launch stopped growing the year I launched Prestige Labs, I just became CEO of 2 companies rather than CEO of 1. The third business I started, useallen.com, still around today, doing great. I saw where chat was going and I saw where AI and machine learning were going a few years ago. And I figured if I were able to aggregate all of the data from every single type of small business, all scheduling brick and mortar in-person appointments, I'd be able to predictively show what days of the week, what times of day, what kind of follow-up sequences got the most amount of people to show up. And since we were compensated on a percentage of people that showed up, we were highly incentivized to solve that problem. And I learned a ton about how to get the most throughput for leads. And I've used that in every one of the portfolio companies that we have. And you can usually add 20, 30, 40% to the throughput on ads, simply your scheduling process.
If what he described with Allen, his third business, goes over your head, that's fine. But the one thing that I think you should take away from the beginning of this is that company is built on a specific need and an untapped opportunity. And so right now there's a lot of data going around, and you see large companies that are really demonstrating how much they value the data that's being thrown around out there. One example of an idea for you is a small business that you can create that's around getting that kind of data and providing it to even local businesses that can benefit from those sales. For example, if you're someone who lives in a neighborhood that you know is hitting a specific age, and you could accumulate information from a lot of different homeowners that you know, maybe it's your neighbors, maybe it's your friends, on how well their roof is doing, and you could sell that information as leads to roofing companies. Roofing companies make a lot of money, and they have a pretty predictable schedule on when roofs need to be replaced. So you could broker the relationship between the roofing companies that historically don't do a great job at marketing and the relationship you have with the people around you.
To solve the problem for gym owners, because one of the biggest constraints is that people don't work their leads. Amazing, I know. But the average gym was getting 9% of leads in the door when they had to work them manually. We were able to get just under 20% of leads in the door without them doing anything. And the average front desk person costs $2,000 plus a month, and we could do it for a fraction of that. Sold the first 10 customers of Allen by going to our distribution base and saying, hey, do you want to try this thing? What was interesting is that we very quickly realized that we couldn't expand outside of our distribution base. The breakthrough was that I realized that we needed to get agencies on board rather than getting small businesses on board, because they'd be like, great, I can work my leads. How do I get leads? And then we're like, oh shit, they don't know how to get leads. So then we started selling agencies, which had another degree of leverage, because if you sell an agency, they could have 50 small business owners underneath of them. I did 2 webinars with people who had big agency audiences, so now you go up another level. I could make one pitch, and in one pitch get 1,000 customers. That was when this thing really took off. I did 2 pitches, and within 6 months we were doing 1.7, also ironically, per month through the software company. Allen was the business that I probably learned the most lessons from. I ended up selling that business as well, 75% of it to a strategic buyer who's still running it and doing a good job with it, and hopefully they'll have a big exit in a few years. And that was an all stock deal, so under NDA, I can't tell you, but I can tell you we did 12 million in the trailing 12 months before the sale. That being said, lesson 1 is that you need to have an in-house CTO if you're going to get into software. I developed software for Prestige Labs. I used the exact same development shop to make the software for Allen. I regret that. Development shops, honestly, they're about as close to a complete scam as you can come to. Because if you really are going to build a software company, you need to build a software company. Like, that's it. Like, you need to build a software company. It's like having a marketing agency and having a white labeled marketing agency doing all your delivery. It doesn't make any sense. Number 2 is that you want to run pricing surveys early. Because we unlocked 4 times the pricing power by simply repackaging how we charge. Exploring different ways to charge based on usage, based on recurring fees, different KPIs. This is especially true with software because there's so many different ways you can charge compared to maybe traditional service. The third thing is having aligned incentives with your customers often just makes you more money. And so that business had a tremendous amount of scale because we had so much alignment with every single stakeholder. The small business owner wanted people to show up, the agency owner wanted people to show up, and we got paid based on show up. So everybody was aligned top down. The fourth thing, throughput on appointments when you're scheduling for sales calls or in-person appointments. The amount of days per week that you are open, the hours that you are open, and the increments of time matter a lot. Like 50 to 200% would be like, marketing doesn't work for me, and they had one time slot for an hour per week that they were willing to take new customers on. That's just stupid. There's no other way to say it. The people who made the most money, who had the most throughput, are the ones who gave the most availability, gave the most flexibility to their customers, were open the most days, and they, unsurprisingly, got more people to schedule and show up. There's a reason small business owners stay small. They make small business owner decisions.
So I'm involved in direct sales in my business day to day with selling insurance to businesses, business to business insurance. And so I understand the challenge here of just working leads and the time it takes to really process those through. Now, he said just under 20% of his leads end up taking an appointment through his system with Alan. And I mean, that's huge. Right now, I mean, it's normal to expect 1%, 2%, and at best maybe 10, if you're working them yourself one after another, picking up the phone, dialing, keeping track of all the information and data as you go through it. So it's fascinating what he was able to build to help people grow their business, because their growth rate is so dependent on the time crunch that they have to simply go through and work those leads. This is one of those things where AI is going to change the game when it comes to sales in the future. And so maybe it's something that you do in your day job. Maybe you thought about, oh, I could sell something on the side and that commission income could be a huge game changer for a family. I agree. I think that's a great idea. But I think AI is going to really shape how we engage with that first reach out and how we deal with the pain of scheduling sales calls.
The fourth business, portfolio of companies that right now does over $200 million a year. And I make these videos so that you can hopefully pass 3 million, 10 million, etc. And then we can invest in your business and help it grow further. I started with the question, what can I do forever? And then worked backwards from there. So it's like, there has to have a lot of leverage. I need to have a capital compounding vehicle. So the first 10 investments that we found, some people I knew from, beforehand, and I would say that the relationship had shifted more and more to like basically an advisory role anyways. And the rest of it has been people who read the book, who watch videos, who listen to podcasts, who come in, who already are aligned with our values. We'll always look at anything as 3 or more, but most of the businesses are over 5. The average business right now is doing 17 million. So acquisition.com is the first business that was really like built on a personal brand and inbound with content. So that's been like the biggest change compared to the other businesses. There's pros and cons to it. Like, it's a slower business overall. If you are used to doing a transactional business where you're doing multiple sales a day, going into a business model where you have one every month is very different, and there's a lot of conversations that happen that don't amount to anything. The thing that excites me most about acquisition.com is I learn more now than I ever have because I'm exposed to more businesses at a higher level. I believe that the purpose of life is to learn. That is my purpose of life. Then enabling myself to learn in as many ways as humanly possible maximizes that. So we co-own all these businesses because I want to learn how solar sales work. I want to learn how mortgage sales work. Like, knowing a lot about a lot of things allows you to cross-pollinate ideas that work well in one industry and then apply them to another one and then get outsized returns. As we saw how quickly and how easily acquisition.com grew, the biggest part of that was because we hired from the top down. There was so much that we could automatically delegate to people who were better than us at their respective things. Director of sales, director of marketing, director of people, director of IT, director of portfolio operations. Not as good as, but better than us, who were teaching us. Every other business I've had, I hired from the bottom up. This one I went from top down, and I will always do that from here on out. You can really only do that if you're well capitalized. That's why venture people raise money, because you can get more talent before the business can really afford the talent. Because at the end of the day, every business incurs debt. It's just what kind of debt. So are you incurring financial debt? Are you incurring management debt, cultural debt, technical debt? And the question is, which one do you want to pick and have to pay down later? And so for us, being the bank was willing to pay down financial debt to not have to pay any of the other debt down in the future, because ultimately on a longer time horizon, we'd move faster. And the other thing is that we have made recruiting talent the single core competency of the business. Most of the companies that we're bringing on, the entrepreneur needs more talent. And we have the ability to recruit talent better than most people because, one, we have so much inbound that comes in. Two, we as a private equity firm have more prestige than most of the companies that are in our portfolio. And so we can recruit, and people will respond to a private equity firm who has portfolio companies more than they respond to Joe's Dry Cleaning. And then we have somebody at Holdco who will help train them on our way of doing business so they get it right the first time. A portfolio company, when their managers are getting stuck or their directors of sales getting stuck, they talk to our director of sales. And if you're a business owner and you'd like to scale to 50, 100 and beyond, we'd love to partner with you on it. We have the track record that we have because we've done it multiple times. And the biggest cost that you have in the business is what you do not know. And so if we can help you pay down ignorance debt, and we can drag what you might already do in 10 years and 3 years, then for us, that's a win for everyone.
I really like how he focused on the value of delegation when it came to a business about scaling businesses. The same example with our housekeepers or landscaping or some of these other tasks that I technically can do, but I can't do it well. And the value of the time I could invest in housekeeping is better utilized in other areas that can both pay for it and then some. It's knowing the value of your time is one aspect. And sometimes that's easily measurable if you work on an hourly job, or if you have a paycheck that helps tell you exactly how much you're making per hour. You can sort of make a judgment call on whether or not it's worth your time to do a different task. Or you could also view it as a way of what kind of value am I getting? Because the reality is that the crew that comes in and cleans our house every other week, they do a measurably better job than I would. And that's just the reality of it. They're just better at what they do. And so outsourcing that kind of task is a way that enhances our overall family's experience. And it's a blessing that we can even afford that and that we get to have that experience. But then we're going to take that and not squander it, but make sure that we are using that time to spend with family and with growing income and with making it worthwhile every minute of every day.